Hello, bro. Back with the 17-Mile Horror by Dick Gessler. How long this chapter is, but don't really feel like reading tonight, but we'll do it. How many pages do we got? Seems like quite a bit. No, it's not that many. All right, chapter 4. I'm coming. Holy shit. Hey, what's up, Bubba? What do you got? This is a novel about Hines Park, buddy. Hines Park murders from 1981. Chapter 4. I'm coming, Sarah said as she pushed open the Dutch doors of the kitchen and hurried down the long hall. She walked into the mahogany paneled study which Pete used as an office and picked up the noisy instrument. Worthington Funeral Home, she almost shouted into the phone. Is this Sarah? The voice was distraught. Yes, this is Sarah. Who am I speaking to? Sarah, this is Ida Simmons. I'm at St. Mary's Hospital. Oh, Sarah, it's Joe. Sarah, he's gone. He's gone. The woman started to sob uncontrollably. Now, Ida, you must get a hold of yourself. Ida, do you hear me? Yes, Sarah, I hear you. Would you please send Carl over for his body? Ida, he'll be right over. Now you can come with Carl, and I want you to come right in the kitchen when you get here. I'll have some tea ready for you. Who was on the phone? Carl called as he walked into the kitchen just as Sarah hung up the phone. It was poor Ida Simmons. Joe just died. May his soul rest in peace. She wants you to come right over and pick up his remains. He's at St. Mary's. After Carl left, Sarah went back to the dough she was kneading for some cinnamon rolls, Carl's favorite. She emptied a quart of raisins into the doughy substance and worked the dough until she had the right consistency. She poured the mixture into a large baking pan, popped it into the oven, set the thermostat, and closed the oven door. She went to the stove, got the tea kettle, and poured herself a cup. She walked to the kitchen table, sat down, and awaited the arrival of her husband and Ida. Death, death, everywhere I look I see death, Sarah thought. I don't know how much longer I can live in this atmosphere. I don't see any happy, smiling faces anymore. All I see are people who are stricken with grief. Hello, bruvs. They come to the funeral home, faces drawn, eyes red from the tears that have flown from them. Flown from them? Does this say? Hi, is this the Bible? Yes, it is the Bible. And no, you are smited. You son of a bitch. Ever come here asking him for the Bible? Don't you ever. Eyes from the red tears that have flown from them. For many, all their hopes and dreams have been shattered. For others, disbelief, unable to comprehend the tragedy that has befallen them. For still others, the eternal question, why? Sarah had just put another pot of water on the stove for more tea when she heard a car pull up to the side door of the home. She looked out the kitchen window to see Carl go around the van and open the door for Ida to get out. Ida, Sarah said as she put her arms around the grief-stricken woman. Here, Ida, she said as she guided her to a chair. You sit right here and I'll give you a nice cup of tea and one of these fresh rolls that I just took out of the oven. 40 years, Sarah, 40 years. 40 years I lived with that man. Ida dabbed at her eyes with a tear-soaked handkerchief. Yes, Ida, I know. He was a good man, too. Never let you want for nothing. Always taking care of you. A good man. Now what am I to do, living in that big house all alone? I don't think I could stand it. Sarah poured the tea and put a couple of rolls on a dish and placed them in front of Ida. Why don't you have your daughter Julie come to stay with you for a while, Sarah said as she sat down at the table. Ida took a sip of the hot tea, looked up at Sarah, and said, "You know, Sarah, I think I'll just do that. She could have someone watch the children for a few days. I don't think she would mind." "Of course she wouldn't mind. She's such a dear girl. Now you finish your tea and roll, then I'll help you make the arrangements." Carl had called the restaurant and talked to Pete. He told him that he had a client. Pete told him that he would be right over and to prepare the embalming room. Carl went down to the embalming room and walked over to the large machine. He checked the various dials, then filled the container with the proper amount of water. He went to the supply room and brought out 2 bottles of maldehyde concentrate. He removed the small tray of scalpels and a small shut-off valve. Pardon. He removed the small tray of scalpels and a small shut-off valve from the instrument cabinet. He placed the scalpels and the valve in a pan of water above a small steam table located next to the cabinet. He turned on the burner and adjusted the flame. "Everything all set, Carl?" Pete walked into the embalming room. I think this is supposed to be a question mark. Just as Carl had taken 2 gowns, gloves, and 2 masks from the instrument cabinet and laid them on a small table next to the stainless steel embalming table. "Yes, Master Pete, everything's ready. I'll go and get the gurney." Carl picked up the collapsible gurney and followed Pete out to the van. He released the catch and snapped the wheels in place as Pete pulled the black wooden box to the rear of the van. With Carl's help, they slid the coffin onto, I don't know why I keep saying onto instead of into, the portable gurney, or onto. Carl pushed the coffin with the body to the side entrance of the home. With Pete opening the doors before him, he moved the cart to a ramp that led to a hallway inside the home. From the hallway, a set of stairs with a wide ramp on one side led directly to the embalming room. Pete helped Carl guide the gurney down the ramp and into the white tiled room. With Carl's help, Pete lifted the body onto the embalming table. Pete flipped on the light switch, and the powerful light illuminated the nude body on the table. The body was about 6 feet in height. At present, he weighed about 160 pounds. He had a large bone structure, indicating that at one time he was a powerfully built man. The deeply wrinkled tan face accented the crop of snow-white hair. Pete looked down at this superb specimen of a man. The broad chest curved down to a slim waist. The thighs were the thighs of an athlete, very muscular. Pete looked down at the groin and gasped. The man's penis, although in its flaccid state, measured at least 9 inches. This guy's really obsessed with penis size. Carl, who had seen almost as many bodies as Pete, was also impressed by the almost perfect specimen before him. When he saw the size of the man's penis, he laughingly said to Pete, "With a poker that size, he must have stirred up a lot of coals." Pete gave Carl a dirty look and said, "Give me the copy of the death certificate and the doctor's report." Carl walked to a small desk at one side of the room and picked up a large manila envelope. Pete opened the envelope and read the doctor's report. Cause of death, heart failure, due to restriction in main artery. Age 68, health before attack, excellent. Possible cause of attack, excessive exercise. That figures, Pete thought. Old Joe thought he had the body of a 20-year-old. He played tennis every day, worked out in the gym at the Y, played 16 holes of golf 3 times a week, and fucked around with every chick he could get into bed with. Serves you right, you rotten bastard. Look what your beautiful body did for you. Nothing. It gave out just as they all do. Nobody has found the fountain of youth yet, and although you thought it could go on forever, for you it's all over. What's up, Bubba? Sooner or later, they all end up on a cold embalming table, waiting to have their life's blood sucked from their bodies. Pete's face was flushed with anger as he replaced the report in the manila envelope and walked over to the desk. He threw the envelope on the desk and stared at it. Joe and Ida Simmons had been close friends of his parents. After Pete lost both of them in a plane crash, Joe and Ida wanted Ginny to sell the large mansion and move in with them. They never had children and welcomed the chance to raise Pete and Ginny. Thanks to Ginny, Pete thought. If she hadn't insisted that she would raise Pete, as her parents' will requested, he might have had to live with this rotten old man. God knows what he would have done to Ginny. He had a reputation in town. Whenever Ida was away at her sister's, he would have teenage girls come over to his house. Oh no. He was a handsome man and had the ability to sweet talk anyone. He enticed the young girls with money, booze, and dope. He had no problem having any teenager he wanted. Oh my God. Pete couldn't understand how any teenage girl could have sex with a 68-year-old man. What has happened to the girls of today, he asked himself. How could they openly and without shame approach a boy and offer him their body? How could they walk around not only in parks but in shopping centers, down Main Street, or any place they so chose and expose their bodies for anyone to see? How could they indulge themselves in drugs and booze until the two rendered them senseless? What happened to the teachings that he grew up with? Weren't there any good girls out there anymore? Didn't any of them have any decency left? Pete walked back to the body on the embalming table. Now, Joe, I'm going to remove all the rottenness in you and make you pure so that you can meet your maker. Nice fucking guy. Pete donned the white gown, slipped the mask over his head, and put on the rubber gloves. Carl did the same, then walked over to the large machine in the center of the room. He poured one bottle of the concentrate into the opening in the container at the bottom of the apparatus. Pete lifted the lid of the pan that was being sterilized on the small steam table and removed a scalpel. Although the embalming process ensured that the body would remain in as near a natural state as possible, sterilization of the instruments used in the embalming process prevented the possibility of bacteria entering the openings in the exposed corpse. Pete walked back to the corpse. With his left hand, he tilted the head away from him. With his right, he made a small incision in the neck. A tiny trickle of blood appeared as the sharp instrument broke through the first layer of flesh. He had the scalpel down on the table next to him and with his fingers exposed the main artery. Another scalpel, Carl, he said as he moved aside the smaller arteries. Carl handed him a larger scalpel and stood by as Pete located the spot he was looking for. Clamps, Pete ordered as he held the scalpel over the artery. I forgot to sterilize them, Carl stammered. Damn it, Carl. We can't wait now. Get me some from the cabinet, quick. Carl ran to the instrument cabinet, grabbed a half-dozen clamps, and walked back to where Pete was standing. He laid the clamps on the small table with some alcohol that was already on the table. He rinsed off the clamps. He quickly went to the other side of the table and placed first one clamp, then the other on the exposed artery. With the clamps in place, Pete severed the artery. A stream of blood shot up, turning Pete's white gown to a crimson red. As suddenly as the stream of blood started, it stopped. Sponge, Pete ordered. Carl opened the plastic bag on the table containing a small cotton pad. Pete washed the remaining blood away from the artery. Arterial valve. Carl handed him a small valve. Pete inserted the two exposed ends of the severed artery into the valve, completing the operation. With the suction line and the pressure line attached to the arterial valve, everything was in readiness. All right, Carl, switch on the pump. As soon as Carl threw the switch, a suction noise could be heard in the room. Pete watched the plastic tubes that were attached to the arterial valve. When he saw blood being sucked back to the embalming machine, he opened the small shut-off petcock and allowed the embalming fluid to flow into the artery. The odor of the blood draining out of the body, combined with the fluid being pumped into the corpse, created a sickening odor in the white-tiled room. Oblivious to the odor, Pete watched the face of the corpse in front of him. He could see the color leave the face, turning the white skin tone to a light gray. After about 20 minutes, the color started to return. The face now was light pink in color. Pete checked the suction line. noted that all the body fluid had been drained, and shut off the valve. Pete ran his hands along the face of the lifeless man on the table. The flesh was still soft to the touch. Good, Pete thought, just the right consistency. The expression on the corpse was relaxed, as if he had died in his sleep. That figures, Pete murmured. He had it easy all his life, and he even had it easy when he died. You rotten bastard, he said as he pushed the face to one side. Carl, you better give him a shave. I see some stubble on his chin. Very good, Master Pete. I'll take care of it. Do you want me to make up his face and arms, too? Yes, Carl. Oh, wait, no, Carl. I'll get that after a while. Right now, I'm going to take a break. Carl watched as Pete took off his mask and gloves and gown. He threw them into a clothes hamper and then walked through a door marked "No Admittance." Before the door closed, he could see the unfinished part of the basement. Pete, when he remodeled the mansion into a funeral home, had left one section of the basement unfinished. Carl could see the stone walls that were the original walls of the Worthington mansion. Carl could see Pete, who was standing in front of a large oak paneled door. Over the door was a sign that read "Wine Cellar." Pete turned around, smiled at Carl, then opened the large door. Chapter 5. You mean to tell me that you've got no clues as to who this killer is? Pete asked his friends as he took a bite of his toast. Who said he's a killer? Sam asked. Well, Pete looked at Sam, his face a bit flushed. I just figured that whoever did this has got to be a killer, that's all. So far, Pete, all we have are 4 missing persons, that's all. But don't you figure that these girls are dead? Pete asked. It doesn't matter what I figure. Until I can turn up some bodies, all they are is missing. Sam, you must have something that you can go on, Pete asked, taking a sip of his coffee. Yeah, I've got something. I've got 3 clues. 3, that's all. Well, can you let an old friend in on what they are? Pete asked, smiling at Sam. Sam looked at Pete. He took a bite of his Danish, washed it down with some coffee, and said, I know that this guy is a Class A psycho. I know that he may be driving a black car. And I know that he probably hasn't had a piece of ass, if you'll pardon my expression, in a long time, if ever. More coffee? Nancy asked as she brought the pot to the table. She didn't ask. That was a comma. I'll have a little more, Pete said as he looked up at the girl. Nancy noticed Pete looking at her, but avoided his eyes. Ever since the experience she had with him on their last date, she felt uncomfortable talking to him. No thanks, Nancy, Sam said, taking the last sip of his coffee. I've got to get back to the office. As Sam entered his office, the phone started ringing. He walked behind his desk and picked up the instrument. Chief Guthrie speaking. Chief, this is Al Russo speaking, Livonia PDI. Understand that you're working on 3 Hines Park abductions. Is that right? Yeah, Sam said. As he sat in his chair, the last abduction was in my jurisdiction. I had no choice. Well, Chief, I would like to ask you a favor. As you know, the other 3 girls that have disappeared were in my territory. The only problem is I don't have the money or the manpower to carry on an investigation. I'd like to know if we could turn this whole case over to your department. Sam placed his hand over the phone. Son of a bitch, he swore. Who in the hell does he think he is? I haven't got a decent lead to go on, let alone a suspect. And this jamoke, the hell's a jamoke, is trying to, I hope it's not like the N-word. Jamoke is trying to dump the whole goddamn mess into our laps. What a lot of fucking nerve. Chief Guthrie, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Who in the hell told you that I have any more on this case than you have? No, Chief, I didn't mean to come on strong about this thing. I just that we know about your reputation. I just figured that if you could spare the time, it would get me off the hook. What do you say? Can you help an old buddy out? Reputation, hell. Who are you trying to shit? If I ever heard a snow job, that's one for sure. Still, he thought there was something about this case that interested him. He had a gut feeling that he was close to the solution. He knew he had very few clues, yet there was something nagging at him that he had not as yet put together. Sam took his hand away from the phone. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll talk to the mayor. If he gives me a few bucks from next year's budget and a few men, I'll take over the investigation. Fair enough? Thanks, Chief. I'll send over the reports that we have and anything else our men have come up with. Sam hung up the phone, got up from his chair, and walked down the hall to an office marked Office of the Mayor. He knocked on the door, then opened it and walked into the office, not waiting for an answer. Hi, Julie. He spoke to a young girl sitting at a desk typing. Is George in? Hi, Sam. What a coincidence. I was just about to call you. George wants to talk to you. You can go right in. Morning, George, Sam said as he walked into the inner office. I understand that you wanted to see me. Sam didn't mention that he had the same intention in mind. Sit down, Sam. I think we have a real problem on our hands. I got another call from the Plymouth Observer this morning asking me what we are doing about these abductions in Hines Park. That's the fifth call in the last 3 weeks. Also, I'm getting calls from some of our prominent citizens asking what the police department is doing to protect the kids who go to the park. Sam, what do you have on this thing? Tell me something I can tell these hound dogs to keep them off my back. George, I'll give it to you straight. Whoever is pulling this thing off is smart. He hasn't left any clues to speak of. He operates at night. No one has any idea what he looks like. I believe that he works so fast that the chances of anyone seeing him are almost impossible. We have reports that he may be driving a black LTD. Other than that, I've got nothing. Nothing but a few ideas that I can't substantiate. Damn it, Sam. The mayor got up from his chair, his face turning red with anger. What's it going to take to catch this guy? Between you and me, Sam, I can tell you this. He walked around his desk and stood in front of the chair that Sam was sitting in. He leaned over and in a half whisper said to his chief, You and I are both coming up for election in November. Now, I don't know how you feel about your job, but as for me, I want to get reelected. If this thing goes on much longer, I'm going to get run out of town on a rail, and you won't be far behind me. All right, George. You want to catch this cycle that's prowling around Hines Park? Well, here's what I want. I want carte blanche on any expenses that I will incur in trying to track the son of a bitch down. I like how son of a bitch is capitalized. I want all the manpower that I feel is necessary to do the job, and I want you to give the press some cock and bull story to keep them off my back until I can sort this thing out. Is that agreed? The mayor looked at Sam and knew that he was angry. He slowly walked back to his desk and sat down. He picked up his desk pen and slowly started twisting it around in his fingers. He knew that the city budget was low. He had just been forced to make some drastic cuts in order to try and reduce the deficit. Yet, he knew he had no choice. He wanted to remain mayor of Plymouth. He liked the money, the prestige, the power that he was able to hold over people. He didn't want to give it up and have to return to his law practice. He liked the idea that he was giving the orders and the others had better follow his orders, or else. And let's face it, he thought, you're lazy. Where else could you ever find a job as soft as this one? All right, Sam, you've got it. Anything you want, just nail this guy before they nail us. Sam walked out of the mayor's office without telling him about the phone call he had just received. He walked to a coffee machine in the hall, put it in his quarter, and pushed the button marked light. When the cup was full, he removed it from the machine and walked back to his office. Setting the cup on his desk, he sat down in his comfortable chair. From a top drawer, he pulled out a meerschaum pipe and a tobacco pouch. He had given up smoking almost a year ago, but he kept his pipe and pouch in his drawer in case of an emergency. Well, if this isn't an emergency, then what the hell is, he thought, as he filled the hand-carved pipe with a sweet-smelling tobacco that he had mixed himself in the local tobacco shop in town. He took a deep drag on the pipe, leaned back in his chair, and looked up at the ceiling. Come on, Guthrie, get those brain cells moving. Let's see, he thought. What do you have so far? You've got 4 reports of missing girls. Reports, he said out loud. He moved forward in his chair and looked at the 4 manila envelopes that were stacked neatly on top of his desk. He spread the envelopes out on his desk in the order that they were received. There's got to be something here, he thought. Some connection, some clue. He puffed on his pipe and noticed that it had gone out. He reached for the book of matches on his desk and relit the pipe. He took deep drags into the coals. Inside were a cherry red, and the smoke filled the small office. He slipped the pictures of the girls out of the folders and laid them side by side. Not much to go on there, he thought. They're all pretty girls, all about the same age, around 19. He checked the description of the girls. Here's something, he thought. They all had black hair. Goths. Not much, but at least it's a pattern. He took a sip of the steaming coffee and read the reports again. The MO was the same in each. The girl would go away from the crowd or the boy she was with and either lie down near the bushes along the Rouge River or she would walk away from the crowd, and when someone noticed that she was gone, she couldn't be found anywhere. There's got to be something else, he thought, as he went through the reports over and over. Hey, Sam, a uniformed officer entered the office. Startling, Sam. I just got these reports from the Livonia PD. Some guy hand-delivered them. Thanks, Ron. Those guys over there don't waste much time, do they? I talked to the chief only an hour ago. I'm going to lunch, Sam. Do you want to join me? I'll pop for some tacos. And tacos capitalized and has an apostrophe. No thanks, Ron, but if you'll bring me back a couple, I'll buy. You got a deal, Ron said as he took a couple of bills from his chief and left the office. Sam was still poring over the reports when the young officer returned with a bag that had that unmistakable smell of Mexican food. He put it on Sam's desk and left to go about his own duties. Sam opened the bag and took a taco in his hand. His eyes scanned the reports as he took a bite out of the spicy sandwich. Look at that, he said out loud, almost dropping the taco. He was checking the dates of each abduction and discovered that, almost to the day, they occurred every 6 weeks. That's strange, he thought. Why every 6 weeks? Why not every week or every month? Why 6 weeks? He went back to the first report and noticed that it had occurred on April 25th, on a Friday. He checked the other reports, but found that the days in the other abductions were not the same. No patterns there, he thought. He opened the large manila envelope that the officer had just given him and spread the contents out on his already cluttered desk. The reports and the pictures were the originals of the copies he had. Nothing new there, he said to himself as he returned the reports and the pictures to the large envelope. What's this, he thought, as he picked up a sheet of paper that must have been stuck to the bottom of one of the reports. The headline on the report said, Police Laboratory, Livonia Police Department. The report concerned a casting that was made of some tire tracks found at the scene of one of the abduction sites. The report read, after taking measurements of the depth of the tire treads on the casting, it has been determined that the vehicle was in the 3,500 to 4,000 weight class. This confirms the report that we have been receiving concerning a black LTD that had been seen around the park at the time of the abductions. An LTD fell well within the weight that was in the report. Sam went back to the copies of the reports that he had on his desk in front of him. As he was browsing through them, he picked up the taco and took a bite. Damn, he said out loud. It's cold. He threw the sandwich into the waste. What? The fuck would you just throw a taco away for? Into the wastebasket and reached for his coffee. He took a swallow of the now cold coffee and threw the cup into the wastebasket to join the cold sandwich. That's the trouble with this job, he murmured to himself. You don't even get a chance to eat properly. As his eyes went over and over the papers in front of him, something caught his attention. The abductions always occurred at one of the many picnic and recreational sites in the park. He noticed that the first and last abductions had occurred at the same site. That means he is using only 3 locations in the park, Sam reasoned. Nankin Mills was the first abduction site. Then came Levan Knoll, followed by Merriman Hollow. He then repeated himself because the last abduction took place at the Nankin Mills Nature Center. I'll say one thing for the guy, Sam thought. He sure knows the area. He's picked some of the most secluded spots in the park. Well, Sam thought, that's about all I can do for now. He placed the reports and the pictures back in their respective envelopes and piled them on his desk. What the fuck? Well, Sam picked up the phone and dialed, Ron, this is Sam. I want you to get over here as soon as you can. What's up, Chief? The young deputy asked. The mayor threw this whole Hines Park mess into my lap and he wants results fast. Like, would you believe yesterday? I'm taking you off the desk and assigning you full time to this case. There'll be a lot of overtime involved, but I don't think you'd mind that, would you? Hi, cowgirl. How are you? Where the fuck were we? Hell no, Chief. I just got married and I could use the extra money. Where do you want me to start? I want you to question these kids that were the last ones to see the missing girls before they disappeared. I'm just wonderful. I know that Livonia checked them out, but maybe you can find something that they overlooked. Is there anything in particular that you want me to look for? Yes, there is, Ron, Sam said as he reached for his pipe. I want ya to check into the background of each missing girl. Find out what kind of girl she was. See if she was into drugs. Find out if she puts out. Try and find out how often she went to the park. I want to know what she was doing just before she disappeared. Excuse me for asking this, Chief, but aren't those facts in the reports from Livonia? God damn it, Ron! Sam threw his pipe into the ashtray. If they were in the reports, do you think I'd ask you to check them again? I don't know what kind of assholes they got over there, but I can tell you that they didn't conduct a very thorough investigation. Okay, Chief, I'll get on it right away. I'll tell Tom to take over the switchboard and I'll be right over. By the way, Ron, Sam reached for his pipe again. Is that asshole Bob Klein from The Observer still hanging around? Yeah, he's here. Sam reached for the matches on his desk, lit one, and took a couple of deep drags, blowing smoke up toward the ceiling. Ron, this is very important. The character would kill his own mother for an exclusive on this story. He's already put the pressure on the mayor, and he's liable to print anything just to get a story in the paper. I don't want you to tell him anything about the case. I don't want him to know that you've been assigned to the case. In short, I don't want him to know nothing. Do you understand? Okay, Chief, the deputy spoke into the phone. Mum's the word. He won't get a thing out of me. By the way, Ron, I'm taking Olinsky off afternoons, putting him on this thing too. You two can work as partners. Now get over here, pick up these reports, and start making some phone calls. After the deputy picked up the envelopes and left the office, Sam picked up the phone and called his wife. Hi, hon, he said. I'm sorry, but I won't be home for supper tonight. Is it that Hines Park thing? His wife asked. Yeah, honey. I've got to go over these reports again and try to find something else that can give me some kind of lead. George is putting the pressure on me. He threw the whole thing in my lap. He's worried about the election. He figures he has to show his constituents that he's doing a good job. Ha, that's a laugh. I'm the one who's getting the job done, and he's taking the credit. Sam, his wife sounded worried. What do you put up with it? I told you just last week. Retire, Sam, retire. You don't need this aggravation. You've got a nice pension coming, and with the money from the crops, why, we would have no trouble making it. Yes, yes, honey, I know. Look, let me get this Hines Park thing behind me, and I promise you I'll give George my 30-day notice. Promise? His wife asked. Yes, I promise. Now you keep something on the stove for me. I won't be too late. After he hung up, he reached for his pipe, which he had somehow lost the knack of keeping lit. He tapped out the half-smoked tobacco and refilled the bowl. He struck a match and soon had the bowl cherry red again. She's right, he thought. He had been on the force for the last 27 years, the last 10 as chief of police. He had a nice pension coming. They had often talked about retiring at 46, which would have given him 25 years on the force. He was now 48, and the last 2 years as chief really got to him. There was too much politics, especially in a small town such as Plymouth. Every time that the city council underestimated the budget and there was a year-end deficit, his department was the first to be cut. He had to end up cutting out all overtime. Why the hell was he called a deputy if he's a small town police chief? You don't have a deputy underneath the chief. You have I don't know what it is, sergeant. Lay good men off for indefinite periods of time and end up being the fall guy for the politicians in town. He was sick of it. Like his wife said, he didn't need the aggravation. He spelled aggravation wrong. Aggravation. Well, this was his last case. Like Nixon had said, they won't have Sam Guthrie to push around anymore. The telephone on his desk started ringing, shaking him out of his daydreaming. Chief Guthrie speaking. Chief, this is Mrs. Olson. I saw it. I saw it. The woman was almost hysterical. Saw what, Mrs. Olson? That car. That black car. Me and Mr. Olson was driving in Hines Park and we saw it. It was right in front of us, Chief. What are you going to do now? Now, Mrs. Olson, calm down, please. Could you tell me what make of car it was? It was black, the hysterical woman said. Sam threw his pipe down on the desk. I don't believe these fucking people, he said to no one in the room. Mrs. Olson, is Mr. Olson with you? Why, yes, Chief Guthrie, he is. Could I please speak to him? Chief Guthrie, this is Leonard Olson. My wife was telling you the truth. We did see that black car in Hines Park. All right, Mr. Olson, can you tell me what make car it was? For instance, was it a Ford or a Chevy or maybe a Chrysler? It was a Chrysler LTD. Mr. Olson, Sam tried to act calm. Chrysler doesn't make an LTD. How do you know it was an LTD? Chief, I saw the letters on the trunk of the car. There was a young man driving, and I could see a blonde girl sitting next to him. Okay, Mr. Olson, Sam said disgustedly. Thank you very much for calling. I'll have my men look right into it. There goes another dead end, Sam thought as he hung up the phone. That must be the 100th call he had received about the black car. Each time that he received a report of the car being seen, he dispatched the car to the location. In each case, the officer found either a car full of teenagers or a young couple. Sam knew that his abductor would be by himself, not with a girl or in a crowd. What the Olsons had seen was a young couple out for a ride in the park. Well, help this guy. Has me locked in his closet. He keeps reading me books. Wish he would kill me already. That's cute. Well, all he could do was to follow up on each call and hope that sooner or later someone would see the right car. He had the money now to spend on extra surveillance, and he would use any means at his disposal until he got his man. Sam decided that he needed a bite to eat, and he threw away the fucking taco already. The cold taco. Guess you can't want. Did they have microwaves in 1981? I think they did, but they were like $5,000. Sam decided that he needed a bite to eat, and he also had to get out for a breath of fresh air. He walked by the night dispatcher's desk and told the man operating the switchboard that he was going to Walter's. He told him that if there were any calls for him, to call the restaurant. It was still light outside as he walked the block and a half to the restaurant. He walked into the back door and found that there were only a few customers enjoying a late evening snack. He found an empty table near the front window and sat down. He saw Nancy coming out of the back room. He figured that she had gone home by now because he had breakfast here this morning. Nancy saw Sam and walked over to the table. Hi, Sam. What are you doing here this time of night? Hey, I might ask you the same thing. What are you doing? Working a double shift? You got it, Sam. June called in sick and I'm stuck here till 9. It's almost 9 now, so you just about got it made. Do you think you could rustle me up a hamburger and get me a coffee? No trouble, Sam. I'll bring you your coffee now. When Nancy brought his coffee, she sat down at the table. Sam, could I ask you something personal? Why, sure, Nancy. He looked at the young girl and saw that she had a troubled look about her. You've known Pete for a long time, haven't you? Why, yes, Sam was surprised at her question. I guess I've known him almost all his life. Why? Has he? She took a napkin from the holder on the table and started twisting it in her hands. Has he always been so formal around girls? Well, Nancy, he had a pretty strict upbringing. He was taught to be polite around girls. It's the way his sister wanted it. Did you know that? He was raised by his sister? Why, no, Sam. He never talked much about his family. Tell me something, Nancy. Do you like the boy? Sam, I don't know what to say. I like him. You know that we've been out on a couple of dates, and he hasn't even tried to kiss me. I think there is something wrong with him. Nancy, I think you've got him all wrong. Just because you found a boy who doesn't paw you when he takes you out on a date doesn't mean he isn't normal. If you ask me, Nancy, you should be glad that you found a guy like Pete. From my observations, a guy like that is hard to find. But Sam, Nancy tried to explain, sometimes when we're alone in the car or in a movie, I can tell that he gets all excited and worked up. when I'm close to him. Then when I try to make a move toward him, he backs off. It's so strange. So strange. Nancy, my girl, if you're going to keep going out with Pete, you're going to have to give him time. It's hard to change the way you were brought up. He wants to respond to you, but can't bring himself to. Nancy looked down at the napkin that she had twisted in her hand. She looked up at Sam and said, I do like him, Sam. He's about the most decent guy I've ever been out with. I'll give it a try. I'll give him some more time. Nancy left the table and went to the kitchen and got Sam's order. She placed the plate in front of him, then left to clear off some tables. Sam didn't know that Nancy had fallen for Pete. He knew that Pete was shy around girls. In fact, it was well known around town. Ginny had protected the boy to the extent that he was afraid to even talk to a girl. He was happy to see that Pete was finally coming out of his shell. He never did figure that it was right for him to keep himself cooped up in that funeral home all the time and never have any social life. Sam finished his hamburger and took a swallow of coffee. There was something about Pete that he noticed in the past few months. He had always been cheerful when they had their usual breakfast together. Lately, however, he seemed distant. Sometimes it was as if he was in a world all his own. Strange, Sam thought. Very strange. He finished his breakfast, laid a quarter on the table, and walked out of the restaurant. Let's see how long chapter 6 is. 58, 7 pages. I'll go for one more. Bring it up to an hour. Chapter 6. Sarah was just picking up the breakfast dishes when she heard the rear doorbell. She swiped her hands on a towel, pushed open the Dutch doors, and walked down the hall to the rear of the home. Why, Muriel, Sarah exclaimed as she saw her old friend standing on the steps. What a pleasant surprise. Come in, and I'll fix us a cup of tea. Muriel O'Reilly was a maid in the Webster mansion, just a few doors down the street. They had been friends for years. Muriel and Sarah had come from England to the United States at about the same time. They hadn't realized it until months later, but they had come from the same county near London. Muriel was born in Ireland and moved with her family at an early age to the outskirts of London. When she was 16, she started working as a chambermaid in one of the large mansions. After a few years, her master asked her if she would like to go to the States and work for a friend of his who had moved to Plymouth, Michigan. Although she hated to leave her parents, the excitement and the challenge of going to a new country convinced her that she was doing the right thing. Well, Sarah, it's been a long time, Muriel said as she sat down at the table. I know, Muriel. Sarah poured the tea and put some rolls on a plate and placed them on the table. How are things at the Websters, Muriel? Sarah, me dear, things is as they have been for the past Lord knows how many years. Nothing ever changes. How are things with you since Miss Ginny died? God rest her soul. Sarah looked down at her tea, slowly stirring the liquid with her spoon. Muriel, there's been a change around here. Things aren't the way they used to be. There's things that's been going on that I can't explain. Why, Sarah, my dear? What do you mean? Muriel was surprised at what her friend was trying to tell her. Oh, Muriel, Sarah started to cry. I don't know how to put it. I just know that something is going on. Muriel, I'm scared. Sarah, why didn't you call me? I would have come over in a minute. Now you stop your crying and tell Muriel's what's bothering you. Sarah dried her eyes on a napkin. Carl's keeping things from me. In all the years that we've been married, I always knew what the man was thinking. Now I don't know. He's hiding things from me. I just know it. Sarah, Muriel looked at her dear friend, trying to comprehend what she was trying to tell her. I've known Carl for a good many years. There is something, and I'm only saying if, then he has a good reason for keeping it from you. If I know Carl, he's doing it for your own good. Oh, Muriel, I do so want to believe that. Sarah, you said that Master Pete's been acting strange too. What do you mean, dear? It's his expression. I've known that boy practically all his life. He was always so cheerful and happy and always fooling with me. Even in a place such as this, now it's as if his face changes from one minute to the next. One second he's like his old self, then suddenly, out of the blue, so to speak, his face changes into a grinning mask. His voice has a sort of sing-song tone to it. When I see him like that, it scares me. My goodness, Sarah. Muriel's face paled as she listened to her friend relate what was going on in the home. I've got a cold chill just listening to you. Is there anything else? Muriel, Sarah spoke in a whisper. As God is my witness, I hear footsteps in the middle of the night. Let the saints preserve us. What? Let the saints preserve us, Muriel cried. Sure, and what kind of footsteps do you hear? It's as if they was coming from inside a wall. Sarah, now you know that's impossible. Each time I heard the footsteps, I went out to the living room, I checked the back stairs, I even went down to the lounge and I found no one. Sarah got up from the table and walked to the stove. She got the tea kettle, filled it with water, and returned to the table. She removed two tea bags from the container she had placed on the table and placed one bag in each cup. In a few minutes, the sound of the whistling tea kettle could be heard. Sarah took the kettle, poured Muriel and herself another cup, returned the kettle to the stove, and sat back down at the kitchen table. 2 months ago, Sarah continued her story. I was upstairs cleaning Master Pete's room. After I finished, I walked down the hall to come downstairs. When I got to the door of Miss Ginny's room, I smelled it. You smelled what? Muriel was almost afraid to ask. Flowers. Oh my God in heaven, Muriel shouted. She got up from the table and walked over to Sarah. Sarah, how could you have stood this all these months and not said nothing about it? She put her arms around her shoulders. I tried. Sarah could hardly get the words out. She was so choked up. I tried to tell Carl, but it was as if he was laughing at me. Sarah took a handkerchief from her pocket and dabbed at Sarah's eyes. She comforted the distraught woman and convinced her to stop crying. There's one more thing that is strange. Sarah, I don't know if my heart can take any more of this. About a month after poor Miss Ginny passed away, Sarah continued her tale, determined to relieve herself of all the tensions and anxiety that had built up in her these past few months. Master Pete stood right there in the kitchen, and with that unearthly grin that comes over him, and that strange voice he uses, he told me that he's locked Miss Ginny's room and doesn't want anyone to go in there. Muriel's face was drained of color. The gruesome tale that her friend was telling her had an effect on her heart, causing her to have a problem breathing. Sarah, she gasped, I can't take any more of this. It's horrible, just horrible. Now it was Sarah's turn to come to the aid of her friend. Oh, Muriel, I didn't mean to upset you with my problems. Please forgive me. That's all right, Muriel gasped, trying to take deep breaths. I'll be all right. Just give me a minute. Sarah went to the sink, took a dish rag, and soaked it under the water tap and wrung it out. She went over to Muriel and applied the wet rag to her temple. After a few minutes, she started breathing normal and appeared to be more relaxed. Sarah put the wet rag in the sink and returned to her seat. The color had returned to Muriel's face, and she seemed her old self. Sarah, I don't know why I'm asking this, but do you have a key to that room? Why, yes. I've had a key for years. I think Master Pete must have forgotten about it. Why do you ask? Well, Sarah, it'll probably be the death of me, but I think we had better try and get in that room and see just what it is that he's trying to hide from you. Sarah stared at her friend, unable to believe what she was hearing. The very idea of going in that room sent cold chills up and down her spine. The scene at the dressing table in Ginny's room with Ginny's lifeless eyes staring back at her flashed before her again. No, I couldn't. I just couldn't bring myself to go back in that room. Mariel could see that her friend was terrified at the idea that she had presented to her. Sarah, my dear, I know that it's going to be hard on you. But maybe the answer to all the strange carrying on around here is right in that room. Mariel, I just couldn't. I know I'm being silly, but I'm afraid of what we'll find in there. What could we possibly find in there? Do you want me to tell you what the whole mystery is about? What do you think it is, Mariel? I think Master Pete has kept the room just as it was when she died, and to keep her memory alive, he keeps flowers in there. Sarah thought about her friend's explanation of the strange goings on that she had been experiencing. It does make sense, she thought. Pete couldn't live with the fact that she was gone. He had last seen her at the dressing table, combing her hair. He had seen her do this hundreds of times. To him, it was a pleasant experience standing behind his sister, talking to her image in the mirror. It was a scene that he would never forget, and like Muriel said, to keep her memory alive, he kept flowers at the table as a tribute to her. I guess it is possible that he is doing that. It does make sense. There now, you see, there's nothing mysterious about it, is there? That explains the flowers, but how do you explain the footsteps? Sarah Muriel had no answer to the question, but she had to tell her friend something to get her mind off it. These are old houses. Isn't it possible that if someone is walking in one part of the house, the heavy wood paneling could carry the sound to another part of the house? Sarah knew that each time she had heard the footsteps, she had found no one in the home. She had no answer to the sounds, but she didn't want to upset Muriel any further. She decided that she would go along with her explanation. Yes, I guess that's. Yes, I guess that what you say is possible. I've heard this old home creak and groan many times. Good, Sarah. I'm happy that you see it my way. Now, to prove that I'm right, we'll just go up there and have a see for ourselves. Is Master Pete going to be home tonight? No. As a matter of fact, tonight would be the only night that we could be sure that he wouldn't see us. He has his monthly mortuary meeting tonight. That's perfect, Sarah. I'll have Clifford get some of Carl's old friends to come over to our house, and that'll get Carl out of the house. What time does Master Pete leave for his meeting? He usually leaves about 8:30 and doesn't get back till after midnight. I'll have Clifford give Carl a call and have him come over about 9. Now don't you worry, Sarah. After you see that Master Pete is only trying to console himself by putting a few flowers by her dressing table, you'll forget about this whole crazy business. It was exactly 8:30 when Pete left the house. Sarah could see him get in his car, which was parked at the side entrance, and drive off. At 9 o'clock, the phone rang. Carl, it's for you, Sarah called out. Yes, hello, who is this? Carl, old buddy, it's Cliff. Say, Carl, I'm having some of the old gang over for some cards. Could you come over? Well, Cliff, I don't know. Sarah gets mad when I play poker. Carl, I heard that. Sarah was listening at the door. You tell Cliff if he wants you to play cards that you'll be right over. Shame on you, making me out an ogre. Say, Cliff, Sarah must be feeling sorry for me. She says that it's okay. I'll be right over. Sarah opened the side door and let her friend in. Did Clifford say anything when you told him you were coming over to see me? Sarah asked as she took Muriel's coat and hung it up. Nah, I told him that you was all alone and I was coming over to keep you company. Muriel, Sarah's voice was strained. Are you sure that we should be doing this? Well, I must admit, Muriel toyed with the belt on her dress. The more that I have been thinking about it, the more scared I was. But Sarah, it's something that's got to be done, so let's get at it. Sarah opened the cupboard door and reached back among some dishes and glasses and brought out an old tin can that had at one time contained tea. She opened the lid and took out a key. The funeral home at this time of night was an eerie place to be in. Pete would turn off most of the lights in the various rooms. In each room, however, he left the side lights on the walls lit. These lights were installed when the mansion was first built. Pete thought that he would leave them when he remodeled the first floor. He said that they added that certain touch to the home. The bulbs were only 60 watts and cast a dim glow against the wall. When he had a body in the viewing room, as he did on this particular night, he turned on an overhead spotlight. The spotlight illuminated the corpse, causing shadows to form on the face. The gentle, relaxed features of the old woman's face, whose body was lying there, were transformed into a grotesque mask. It was a horrifying sight to behold for anyone not accustomed to being around a dead person. The two women walked down the long hall that led to the front part of the home. When Sarah reached the stairway that led to the second floor, she stopped. Mario, who followed close at her friend's heels, got a cold chill as she saw, oh, damn ghost turned the page. Now where are we? God damn it. Now I lost the spot. When Sarah reached the stairway that led to the second floor, she stopped. Mariel, who followed close at her friend's heels, got a cold chill as she saw the dimly lit viewing room. At the east end of the room, she could see the old woman lying in her casket. As she looked at the face in the casket, the shadows caused by the spotlight played tricks on her old eyes. Mariel gasped and put her arms around Sarah. Sarah, she whispered, I thought I saw her eyes move. Now, Muriel, your eyes are playing tricks on you. She's dead. Test her soul. Rest her soul. It's just the lights. They do that to you. Sarah and Muriel stood at the foot of the staircase and looked up to the landing that overlooked the large viewing room. The door to the right at the head of the stairs was Ginny's room. Sarah looked at her friend, fear and anxiety written all over her face. Muriel was frightened to the point that her frail body was trembling. Sarah put her hand on the teak wood railing and slowly ascended the winding staircase. When she reached the landing, she stopped. There was a deathly silence in the large mansion. It was so quiet that Sarah could hear her heart beating. She looked at the door that had been closed to her these past 4 months. The horror that she had experienced behind the door, that door, came out to grip her once more. She started to walk toward the door, but found that her feet were frozen to the spot she was standing on. I smell it, Muriel whispered. The sweet smell of flowers permeated the landing they were standing on. I do too, Sarah answered. Sarah took the key out of her apron pocket and somehow managed to move her feet in the direction of the room. She put the key in the lock and turned it. As she entered the darkened room, she was almost overcome by a sweet, sickening odor that filled the air. She gasped for breath. The odor hit the pit of her stomach, causing it to repel. She placed a handkerchief over her mouth to keep from vomiting. As they stood in the deathly still room, their eyes slowly became accustomed to the darkness. Muriel looked around the room. The reflection from the street lights that lined the circular drive on the east side of the mansion cast rays of light through the large bay windows. Her eyes fell on a large canopied bed, sitting against one wall of the large room. In the dim light coming in from the window, she could make out a mirror over a large stone and brick fireplace. As she looked into the mirror, she could make out what looked like a figure sitting at a dressing table across the room. When she saw the outline reflected to the mirror, her blood froze in her veins. She slowly turned her head to the right, hoping against hope that what she saw in the mirror was an illusion caused by the dim light. As her heart stopped beating and the breath no longer came from her lungs, she saw what she had seen in the reflection in the mirror. A woman, one hand holding a brush to her hair, was sitting at a dressing table, her lifeless eyes staring back at Muriel. Muriel let out a shriek and fainted dead away, her body falling to the thickly carpeted floor. Muriel, oh my God, Muriel, Sarah cried as she knelt beside her unconscious friend. As she knelt beside the stricken woman, she suddenly was overcome with a terrifying fear. The hair stood up on the back of her neck. Beads of cold sweat started forming on her brow. She somehow managed to get to her feet, summoning the last ounce of courage. In her fear-ridden body, she slowly walked to the figure at the dressing table. As she looked in the mirror, the horror of what she was seeing suddenly came over her. The room started to revolve, the blood drained from her head, and as she had done 4 months ago, she fell in a heap beside the seated figure. The scene at the dressing table was one of undescribable horror. On each side of the table was a large bouquet of flowers. From the faint glow of the streetlights, the face of the woman could just be made out. The eyes of the woman, which were open, were sunk deep into their sockets. The flesh had turned a grayish color and was peeling off the face in layers. The flesh from the lips had been eaten away, turning the face into a grinning specter. As one looked more closely at the ghastly apparition, seated at the table, maggots could be seen coming out of the openings in the nose, mouth, and ears. After what seemed like hours, but was only minutes, Sarah regained consciousness. Realizing where she was and what had happened, she crawled on her hands and knees to where Muriel still lay on the floor. Shaking her stricken friend by the shoulders, she managed to revive her. She helped the poor woman to her feet and out of the room. Holding her up with one hand, she put the key in the lock with the other. After locking the door, she helped her down the winding staircase, back down the long hall to the kitchen. She sat her down at the kitchen table and walked over to the stove. She turned on the burner under the tea kettle and walked back to the table. For a long while, neither woman was able to speak. The horror that they had witnessed had shocked them so much that they were both numb. Sarah walked to the stove when she heard the whistling tea kettle. She poured each of them a cup and brought the cups back to the table. After taking a few sips of the hot liquid, she could feel the turbulence start to settle in her stomach. Color began to return to her cheeks, and she could feel her heart resume its normal beating. It sounds like she's got COPD. Muriel, I don't know what to say. I don't know if what I saw in there was a ghost or if it was really Miss Ginny. The reaction of the strong tea had the same effect on Muriel. She could feel the numbness leave her body. Her breath and her heart once again were normal, and after a few more big swallows, she was once again her old self. Sarah, I don't know what I saw up there. I only know that I was so scared that I was liable to see anything. But Muriel, Sarah looked at her friend, astonished by what she had said. You did see a woman at the dressing table. I wasn't seeing things, was I? Sarah, Muriel let out a deep sigh. Let me put it to you this way. We both went up to that room, scared out of our wits. I think it best that we keep what we thought we saw to ourselves. If we told anyone about this, they would think we was balmy. Muriel finished her tea, put on her coat, and gave Sarah a kiss on the cheek. Keep this to yourself, Sarah. I'll call you tomorrow, and we'll talk some more about it. But for now, put it out of your mind. What a fucking thriller this is. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. And there were no real penis jokes today, or sex scenes. Alright, bruvs, that's all.